Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'd like to single out Mr. Krikorian and thank him for his excellent testimony. I honestly don't know how anyone could disagree with one word. But before I get to a question for Ms. Richard, Mr. Chairman, I just have to tell you how it seems to me right now, and that is that the President of the United States says he wants to protect the security of the American people. We have a bill on the House floor where the FBI has to certify that a Syrian refugee is not a threat to the United States. And yet the President of the United States is threatening to veto a bill that tries to protect the security of the American people. I have no rational explanation for the President's threatened veto. It is simply astounding to me that a President of the United States would want to veto a bill that tries to protect the security of Americans. I just don't get it. But, Ms. Richards, my question to you is this. This year we have admitted 1,700 refugees from Syria already, just in the last several months. How many of those 1,700 refugees have been arrested for committing a crime?
So we've brought 1,700 in the last fiscal year, which ended September 30th,
Right.
2,000 since the start of the crisis. And as far as I know, none have been arrested, unless you
Okay.
have contradictory
And do you track all the refugees from Syria, including the 1,700, so you would know?
No, we
whether-
do not track them after the first 3 months in the United States.
Then how do you know whether they've been arrested for
I
committing a crime?
rely on the law enforcement agencies to tell us.
Okay. And so far as you know, none of the 1,700 have been arrested?
That's right, I haven't heard of any.
As far as the stopping of the tracking after 3 months, are you going to stop tracking the 10,000 proposed to be admitted next year after 3 months and the 20,000 perhaps the year after? When are you going to stop tracking those individuals as well?
Once refugees are in the United States, after a year of being here, they
Right.
become legal permanent residents.
Right.
And after 5 years, they're allowed to
And
take the test
I
for
understand that. I'm
citizenship.
talking about
And
the early,
because of
the early
that,
period.
they are treated pretty much like ordinary Americans, and they are not tracked.
Okay. Right. But what I'm saying is, are they treated any differently than any other refugees? Do you consider them to be any more of a threat than other refugees or not?
Well, they're not treated differently than other refugees.
Okay. I think most people would consider to be Syrian refugees, about whom we've
I
already
guess
heard.
Syrians are less of a threat, actually, because they've fled their country. They voted with their feet.
Syrians, well, let me stop you
And
there.
the
Let me
Iraqis come
stop you.
directly
No, let
out
me
of
stop you there
Iraq.
real quickly. You say Syrians are less of a threat, even though we've had testimony from the FBI director that of all the cohorts of refugees, including Iraqi refugees, we have less information about the Syrian refugees than the others. I mean, the FBI director says he regrets he doesn't have more data about the Syrian refugees, and he has real concerns, and he thinks it's risky. Apparently, the administration disagrees with the FBI director, but you're saying, again, I just want to make sure that Syrian refugees are less risky than other refugees?
Well, my point is that Syrian refugees have been outside their country, and so we know what they've been up to, and there's a record of the time they've spent outside their country.
They
the
may
last
not
4.5
have
years.
a record of terrorism. They may be would-be terrorists. They may be terrorists in training. Terrorist organizations have already said they're going to use the refugee program to try to infiltrate the United States, and you say you're less worried about Syrian refugees than other refugees?
I am very worried about terrorists.
I'm sorry?
I'm very worried about terrorists. I think we should focus on terrorists. I think we should prevent terrorists from coming to the United
And
States.
don't you think Syrian refugees might someday become
I
terrorists?
think the odds of a refugee being a terrorist are very, very small. But that doesn't stop us
Right.
from focusing our program to make sure nobody comes in who might be a terrorist.
Right. I appreciate you're trying to focus the program that way, but we've heard from law enforcement officials that you really don't have the data you need to make that determination. But let me go on
What
to
the FBI has said is they don't have a lot of data
right.
from inside Syria, which makes sense because the FBI has not operated inside
Exactly. So I don't think there's any way
and,
for you to...
And it's also normal for us with most refugees not to have data. The exception is Iraqis
Right.
and
But if you
Afghans.
don't have the data on the Syrian refugees, then it seems to me to be very difficult for you to give the American people the assurance that they're not going to commit terrorist
We
acts.
do have lots of information about Syrian informations. The FBI does not have a big amount of holdings on Syrians based on U.S. presence in Syria.
Right. The FBI
We have a
said-
lot of information about Syrian refugees, and Leon's program, and he should probably talk about this more than I should,
Yeah.
is it collects the information and does a fantastic job. I've sat through those interviews.
Right.
Instead of doing scores of visa applicants in a day, they take their time and they do about 3 or 4 refugee applicants.
Well, all I can say is every law enforcement official, and I've heard a couple testify before committees in the last 4 weeks, have disagreed with you. They say they have less data, less information about the Syrian refugees. If you're an outlier on that, you're entitled to your opinion. I'm just saying what other law enforcement officials have testified. Last question is this. If the citizens of a state or a city do not want to have Syrian refugees resettled within their jurisdiction, state or city, is the State Department, is the administration going to force them to take those refugees?
Well, there's a legal answer, and then there's the reality answer. The legal answer is
Well, let's
this
go
is
to
a
the
federal government program, and so the federal government has the right to resettle refugees all across America, as we do in 180 countries, all types of cities.
Right.
and
I understand that. What's the reality?
The reality answer is this program only functions if we have the support of the American people, very much at the level of communities and societies and towns, to come forward and help these refugees and
Right.
help
So-
them get jobs and help them
So,
survive.
so you're saying, I appreciate that. So you're saying the administration, while it might assert that it has a legal right, is not going to force the resettlement of refugees in
Well,
locales.
that's for the
Let me
president to
finish.
decide, but my
in locales where
recommendation
the-
would be
let me
not to
finish my
resettle
statement.
anybody
Let
in
me-
a
Let me
hostile
finish my
environment.
statement, please. Let me repeat that. You're saying the administration, while they have the legal right to force the resettlement, is not going to exercise that legal right if the local communities oppose the settlement of the refugees?
No, I haven't said that, Congressman, because it's up to the president to decide that. But I certainly would not want to resettle anybody in a hostile community. Now, I don't think we have many of those in the United States.
Okay, and I wouldn't
frankly.
refer to them as hostile communities. They're acting in what they consider to be their best interest in protecting their own people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My time is up.
The gentleman